Diplomática a la Misión de Reclutamiento de Naciones Unidas 2013. Espero que sea del mayor provecho esta sesión que vamos a tener a continuación. Y le voy a dar la palabra a doña María Ángeles Gutiérrez, que es la directora de la Unidad de Funcionarios Internacionales y coordinadora en España de este evento, juntamente con el equipo de Naciones Unidas.
Buenas tardes. Como probablemente muchos de ustedes saben, la Unidad de Funcionarios Internacionales es la unidad del Ministerio de Asuntos Exteriores que se dedica a ayudar a los españoles que están en proceso de intentar conseguir un trabajo en Naciones Unidas u otros organismos multilaterales. Hacemos un trabajo de información, de asesoramiento y fundamentalmente de apoyo al trabajo que Naciones Unidas desarrolla en esta tarea. Simplemente quería darles las gracias a ustedes por haber venido y dar las gracias a la Misión de Naciones Unidas presidida por doña Magdalena López, Directora de Recursos Humanos de la Secretaría e integrada por Lynn Goldberg, que es responsable de reclutamiento en la Secretaría, también en el Departamento de Recursos Humanos, y Leila Alañayak, que es del Fondo de Población de Naciones Unidas en Ginebra, subdirectora. Ellas les van a explicar mejor que nosotros cómo funcionan los procesos de acceso a Naciones Unidas, cómo son complejos pero son públicos y accesibles a cualquier ciudadano que reúna los requisitos necesarios y acredite los méritos necesarios para obtener un puesto. Y gracias por haber venido y les doy la palabra.
Bueno, muchas gracias al Ministerio, a la Escuela Diplomática, y vamos a empezar a hacer esta reunión un poco interactiva para que aprovechemos las 2 horas y media que tenemos. Entonces, mi nombre es Magdalena López, yo ingresé en Naciones Unidas hace ya casi 30 años, ingresé a través de un anuncio de periódico y fui una de las pocas, o soy una de las pocas que de la primera aplicación fui contratada. Hay mucha otra gente que cuando aplica tienen que aplicar varias veces. Empecé en el Programa de Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo, después pasé a UNICEF, después trabajé en el Programa de Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo y ahora estoy trabajando en la Secretaría de Naciones Unidas. Voy ahora a cambiar el inglés. ¿Está bien para todos? Okay. So, has everyone had lunch here? Yes? Who hasn't? Hands up. Okay, Lynn, are you watching them?
Yes.
We have to keep an eye on them. You cannot sleep.
See you.
All right, good. All right, this is what we are going to do today. First, we are going to give you some indications on how to join the UN, what are the different career opportunities, and how you can search throughout the UN system depending on your profile and your background and your age. Then we are going to give you some tips on how to apply to the UN, and Lynn will be taking care of that. And then, who likes interviews? Who likes interviews? Job interviews. All right, I have no choice but to tell you that to get a job in the UN, exactly as outside, you will need to go through an interview, right? And there's another thing I have to tell you, that most of our interviews are either on the phone or on Skype. And the reason for it is that we cannot travel you. So now, do you like telephone job interviews? You like them. Excellent. So we are going to try that you love the telephone interviews by the end of the session. Is that okay? And then at the end, we'll give you some space for questions and answers. Is it clear? Are you in the right place? Anyone not in the right place? You still have time to go out. No? All right. So let me start. And then I'll hand it over to Leila and then to Lynn. So here you have the map of the world, and here you have the many organizations that we have in the UN system. And it ranges from specialized organizations like WHO, FAO, ILO, IMO, UPU, those are specialized organizations. And then it ranges to other organizations like the UN Secretariat, UNFPA, that takes care of a population. UNICEF, has everyone heard about UNICEF? That takes care of children. UNDP, that takes care of development. So each organization has a specialization. Some organizations are smaller, some of them are larger. Which is the oldest organization? UNESCO? Unfortunately not. Huh? UN headquarters? There were some specialized agencies that were created before the UN and then joined the UN. ILO, yes, but is not the oldest, but is older than the UN Secretariat. ILO was a key organ of the League of Nations. No, that is after the 40s. Okay, the oldest organization is ITU. It used to be the International Telegraphic Organization, now the Telecommunication, and it was created in the 1860s. And then UPU and ILO are the following oldest ones. So what we want to stress to you is that depending on your profile, do not concentrate only on one organization. Look at your options in the diversity of organizations that we have. And I see that some people are taking notes. You don't have to take notes. The presentations are going to be posted on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs website. So all of them will be posted there, including the link to this video that the ministry has kindly agreed and arranged. The starting points. There are various starting points to join the UN. You can be an international civil servant or a local civil servant. To be an international civil servant, the main way of getting into the UN, be it in UNFPA, UN Secretariat, or any of the other organizations, is through a vacancy announcement, and we do announce our jobs in the internet, and those are individual vacancies. Besides that, we do have, for example, language examinations, mainly in the UN Secretariat, UNESCO, and FAO, for interpreters and translators. Any interpreters and translators here? No? One, good. But I'm sure some of you may have some friends, some family that could be interpreters or translators. Then we have the Young Professional Program. Who is 32 years or younger here? Quite a few. Good. And who is older than 32 but have friends that are 32 or younger, or have family that have 32 or younger, or have children that are 32 or younger? Good, so this is also for you. All right, and Lynn will be explaining this to you. Then we have the Associate Expert Program that Lynn will also be explaining, and Spain has been one of the major contributors of JPO to the UN system. Locally recruited staff. These are not international staff. These are normally national staff members that are recruited to serve in their country. So it would be Spanish to serve here in Spain. In Spain, locally recruited are very, very few. We do have a few here in Madrid who are serving the World Tourism Organization, and then you have a few in Valencia that are also serving the UN Secretariat in the Valencia base. Besides joining us in any of those ways, you could join us as a temporary staff member, and that is for short-term assignments. For temporary assignments, there is no upper limit of age. For the individual vacancies, currently in the UN Secretariat and the system, the upper limit is 62. It will be 65 in the future. But for temporary appointments, there's no upper limit. You can exceed that age. You can also contribute as an individual consultant and contractor, and Lynn will be explaining a bit about that. And again, there's no upper age. you can exceed the 62. And finally, other ways of contributing are internships as interns or as UN volunteers. Is it clear for all of you? Yes, up to now? Good. So in the Secretariat or in the UN system, Leila, Lynn, and myself are international civil servants. Angeles, who introduced us a few minutes ago, she's a national civil servant. She works for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and she works for the government of Spain. We serve the 193 countries of the UN Secretariat. So those are the member states that we are serving. In the Secretariat, we have 44,000 staff members and more than 100 civilian troop contributing civilians that are police or military in our different missions throughout the world. We do have a number of thousands of consultants and interns and others. So we do have a good range of talent that we need to manage in the UN. Where we are. The UN Secretariat is all around the world. We do have certain locations where we have larger offices like New York, Geneva, Vienna, Nairobi, and then we have some regional commissions in Santiago, Bangkok, Addis, and Beirut. But besides that, we do have other offices throughout the world, and we do have missions, peacekeeping missions. Have you heard of Haiti, MINUSTA? That is one of our missions, and we have another missions in Africa, in Asia, and the Middle East. So we serve around the world. Equally, UNFPA serves all around the world. However, there are some agencies like IMO, like UPU, that are mainly headquarters-based. They hardly have any positions outside the headquarters. IMO, the Maritime Organization, is based in London. So the majority of the positions are in London, very few outside. Equally, for example, the Intellectual Property Organization in Geneva, most of the positions are in London. In Geneva, sorry, very few outside. But if you go to UNICEF, UNDP, FAO and others, we do have all around the world position. Is that clear? So depending on what you want, some organizations are more for you than others, and some of you can apply to all the organizations. What can you do for us? Who is a cartographer here? No one? Do you know cartographer? If you know, let us know. All right. And for the whole UN system, we are all looking for lawyers, communicators, IT experts, procurement experts, auditors. So in any of the organizations that I have mentioned, we are looking for those people. However, in some of the organizations, we are looking for more specialized individuals. For example, demographers. It's mainly UNFPA and us that are looking for demographers. Some other organizations will not be looking for demographers. IMO, the Maritime, will not be looking for demographers, but they will be looking for lawyers, administrators, procurement, and IT individuals. Is that clear? In the UN Secretariat, for example, we will look for electoral affairs experts. There are mainly three organizations that will look for that expertise, and that is UNOPS, UNDP, and the Secretariat. And Lynn will tell you her story of when she was serving as an electoral affairs officer in the first elections that took place in South Africa. So as you can see, the gamut of profiles that we are looking for ranges for the main ones across, but some that are very specialized. Aviation, electoral affairs. For example, we are also looking for library science. We have a full library in the UN. We look also for drug control and crime prevention, but that is only in the UN Secretariat and some of the others, but not the whole UN system. language examinations. I think there were 2 individuals that raised their hand. Good. So for the language examinations or for the language positions, we do need you to pass the exam. And the exam is for those individuals that speak at least 3 of the official languages of the UN. And that is English, French, Spanish, Chinese, Russian, and Arabic. So therefore, you have to have the full command of those 3 languages, one main one. And in order to apply, you must be 55 years or under, have a degree. The degree does not have to be in interpretation or in translation. But for interpretation, we need you to have had 200 days of interpretation. Is that clear for both of you? But you do need to present the exam. For the individual vacancies, there's no exam, only for the young professionals, and we will explain it. So if you know of anyone, let us know. Here the ministry has been very supportive in organizing the exams that have as Madrid as the examination center. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Leila. And Leila is going to tell you her story of how she joined the UN. She didn't join as young as I did, and she joined more at the middle career, which is maybe the situation of some of you.
You're giving away all my secrets. Thank you. My name's Leila, and I am the Deputy Director of the UNFPA office in Geneva. And how I came to UNFPA was not at all in the same way as Marta came to the UN Secretariat. In my case, I have a journalism background, and I spent most of my life as a journalist or in related communications work. And I worked a lot in Africa, and I was in Bangkok, and I was stationed there as a foreign correspondent. And then my brother, who was living in Geneva, had a baby. Well, his wife did. And I came to visit because I'm a good aunt, and I came to meet my niece. And I was happily in Geneva, and I went to a bar, and I had a cup of coffee, and I almost fainted when I saw the price of the cup of coffee, which was like €3, the equivalent of my entire day's food budget in Bangkok. So it was pretty clear that if I wanted to stay in Geneva and see my family for anything longer than another half hour, I would definitely have to get some work. Now, I've always been attracted to international affairs. I've always worked in development in one way or another. As a journalist, although I covered conflicts and things like that, I also worked a lot in following up on projects related to poverty, HIV/AIDS, maternal health. And so the desire to have some kind of a relationship with the international system was always there. So Geneva happens to be a head office for a lot of UN organizations, and I was fortunate enough that in my years as a journalist, I had become familiar with the UN system, and so I was able to find the name of somebody in one of the organizations, because sometimes all you need is one name for somebody to explain to you how things are working. In my case, I was a little bit familiar with how the UN worked, but certainly not enough to go in there and find a job. So anyways, this one person was kind enough to introduce me to a few people, and I asked around whether there was any work. Well, obviously the process of being inducted into the United Nations is not something that you just walk around a hallway and try to get in, you know? So what I did do is I was able to market myself for a very short-term contract. My first major, wonderful contract with the United Nations was for a total of 5 days. So I was hired to write a report in 5 days, and I succeeded in writing the report, so I was hired to write another report for another 5 days. And this went on until I graduated to a 2-week consultancy. And after a few of those, I graduated to a 1-month consultancy. And I sort of was a consultant for the United Nations for about 18 months until a position came up that was appropriate to my skills and for which I was actually qualified. So when that position came up, I applied, and I was fortunate enough to get the job. And that's how I came into the United Nations, which is as a consultant, as opposed to sort of a more direct approach that a lot of other people might take. So how many of you know UNFPA? one half person? Okay, great. All right. UNFPA, then that's great. I can tell you all about it. It's a small development agency. It's not the size at all of the places like the UN Secretariat or UNDP or all these large agencies. Very modest, but we have a very specific mandate that focuses on population and on sexual and reproductive health. So on the population side, we deal with the big population challenges of the day, and there are many huge challenges, as you know, in some of the high fertility countries. There are issues of poverty, a big youth population, high unemployment, and then in countries that are sort of middle and higher income, we have low fertility, so aging. The challenges are huge and they're not the same in every region. So that's something that we try to deal with, and we help governments come up with policies or censuses or population-related activities that they need in order to meet those specific challenges. And we work in sexual and reproductive health, which is basically the entire life cycle of a woman who is going to have children. It's the simplest way to put it. From the moment she decides that she wants to have children, which is the family planning agenda, right through to her health while she is pregnant, ensuring that women have an opportunity to have health services if they need them, right through to the birth of the child to make sure that if there are any issues there, that emergency care can be provided, and especially in poorer settings or in conflict settings. UNFPA, as I said, is not a huge agency, but we still have 2,350 staff members, so that's quite a bit. We work in 150 countries, and if you look at those figures and you divide up the number of staff by the number of countries, you'll realize that we can be, in some countries, quite small. So we have offices that have 1, 2, 3 people. And some offices, of course, have 60 people. So this is how we end up with a very small number in some. And that gives us our specificity, which is being extremely diverse on the one hand, and on the other hand, also being very specific in the kinds of people that we need to recruit. Now, Martha was saying earlier that there are certain types of professions that are the same, that fulfill the requirements of all the United Nations agencies, and we're no different from that. We need people who manage budgets. We need people who have a legal background. We need people who can manage staff, who can run programs, who can liaise with governments. So all of those are the same across the board. I think where we have a little bit of a divergence with that general profile is, as Marta also explained, we always need demographers or people with some kind of a background in population. We also tend to hire people with a medical background, not necessarily doctors or nurses, but also midwives or people who have had a tangential relationship with the health field. Certainly a lot of public health experts, because the public health agenda is one that is broad enough to encompass the more specific health aspect along with the broader relationship with administration and policy that is also very important in our work. And just one last word is that often, especially because we have these smaller offices, the people we hire, even if they do have a technical background, are people that actually have to be able to multitask and do a lot of very different things. These people sometimes have to, while they're managing their medical programs or their maternal health programs, they also have to raise funds, liaise with the government, talk to the media, build alliances with civil society organizations, manage their budget, who knows, maybe even fix their computer. So you really have to have a broad experience and a broad ability to be quite adaptable and flexible in the way you work, because you just never know what you're going to have to deal with in a small office. Thank you. And I'll now pass it to Lynn.
Buenas tardes. My Spanish is getting better by the day. So my name is Lynn Goldberg, and I started my career at the UN about 20 years ago. I started as an intern while I was a law student. And my first internship was at the Center for Human Rights in Geneva. Does anybody know what that office is now called? the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. So during that internship, my love affair with the UN began because I was a law student working with other law students from all over the world on human rights issues. And this really stirred passion in me. So after that summer, when I came back to finish law school, I knew that I wanted to work at the UN. But this was in the 90s, and there was no internet. I didn't know anybody at the UN. I didn't have any real information. So when I graduated law school, I volunteered for 2 days a week at the liaison office at the Center for Human Rights. But I still had to figure out a way to pay the bills, right? So I made a deal with my father that I would work 3 days a week for him as a lawyer, and he would give me money for that, and then I would get to work at the UN for 2 days a week. Now, he was not very happy with this deal because he wanted to know, are you going to get a job from this? So after a year, do you think I got a job from this? How many people think I got a job? All right, let me ask it a different way. How many people think I didn't get a job? Right, I didn't. So my father fired me, and it was mutually agreed. And then I went and I did another internship for free in Washington, D.C. And I did this at the Lawyers Committee for Human Rights. And I was networking, and I was finding out information about how to get work in the UN. And somebody told me, you really need to go to the field. If you want to be a human rights lawyer, you need to get experience on the ground working in conflict or post-conflict settings. I was like, yeah, but how do I get that experience? So I continued interning, and I, to pay the bills, worked as a waitress. How many of you think I was a good waitress? Okay, so in 1993, it paid off because I got my first paying job with the United Nations in Haiti, which was called MICV. It was the first human rights mission with the UN, and it was a joint mission with the Organization of American States and the United Nations. Once you're in the organization, it becomes a lot easier to get your next job. So my next job was in 1994. I worked in South Africa as an electoral officer during the first fair and free elections in South Africa. And we were advising and monitoring. We were not running the elections. And that was a very exhilarating, exciting time. And then after that, my next assignment, and when I say assignment, we still have to apply for all of these jobs, was in Rwanda as a human rights lawyer in the aftermath of the genocide. Now, can you picture me in Rwanda with no electricity, no running water? So the point is, I'm flexible, as Marta says. You have to be able to work sometimes in difficult environments. After Rwanda, I took a break, and I didn't really take a break. I took a break from the UN, and then I went to New York, and I prosecuted child abuse for 2 years. So it wasn't really a break. And then after that, I have to admit, I became disillusioned with public service. I'd see genocide, child abuse. So I went back to school, and I got a master's in public administration. Then I came back to the UN, and I've been in New York since then doing a number of different jobs. I've worked in the Office of Legal Affairs in the Treaty Section for 5 years. I've worked in the Department of Peacekeeping, doing administrative and policy, legal work. I've worked in the Department of Field Support as the Special Assistant to the Director of Logistics. And now I'm in the Office of Human Resources Management, where I don't do any legal work. And why did I tell you my whole story? Because I think, first of all, it illustrates two things. To work in the international arena, be it at the UN or in any of our organizations, you need to be perseverant. It's not going to happen on day one. You really have to take some personal risks and keep trying. Secondly, you can see that I have a legal background, but I was able to transition to do a lot of different types of jobs with my same background. And I think that if you look at your backgrounds, you will be able to see that you, even if you're an economist, you might be able to do budget or finance, or if you're an engineer, you could do project management. So you need to think broadly about your backgrounds. Now I'm